was born February 4th, 1984. She was born to her parents, Alvin Notice and Kathy Lewis. She has 3 brothers, Tyrone, Tyrell, and Christian, a stepmother, Veronica, and a stepsister, Natasha. And she had maternal and paternal grandparents who loved her very much. Tiana was a very artistic child with a love for music. She spent a lot of her time in choirs and singing groups. She loved to write her own songs and wrote endless poetry. I'm jealous. I always wanted to write poetry and I never could. She had a love for all types of music and artists and was described as very mature for her age. She completed her high school diploma at Pittsburgh State College and attended the University of Hartford down the road from her sister Natasha at the University of Connecticut. In college, she quickly became an activist committed to many issues that were facing the people of the United States. Her friends and family knew her concerns about the disenfranchised. She, in fact, founded a chapter of the Roosevelt Institution on campus. Tiana was a campus leader and a mentor to undergraduates in the chapter. She participated and volunteered at the Women's Center and a center that promoted Eating Disorder Awareness Week and World AIDS Day. After Tiana graduated from college, she continued her education at the University of Hartford in the Communications Department. She was 1 semester away from completing her degree and graduating with her master's degree, and at the time was considering a political or legal career and thinking about a law degree. Her mom said that Tiana loved to argue and she had always encouraged her to be a lawyer so she could debate with people. I think I might be a little offended if my mom described me as loving to argue, but I giggled a little when I found that quote because I feel like she probably would say that about me. Anyway, Tiana was just 25 when she met a man named James Carter II in 2007. They met on a website called MySpace. Tiana wasn't looking for a serious relationship because she had just gotten out of a 5-year relationship with her college sweetheart. But she agreed to meet James for a date, and they met out in public. Her mother said, I don't know what she saw in him because even though I never met him in person, I only saw his picture and I immediately disliked him. You might call it mother's intuition. James told Tiana that he owned his own home, that he was a manager at a finance company, that he did not have any kids, but wanted to have some at some point. All of this ended up being untrue. He also gave Tiana a cell phone that was on his plan that he paid for, and he purchased new tires for her car. At the time, Tiana thought he was just courting her and being nice. But about 6 months into their relationship, James is sentenced to 5 months in jail for the domestic abuse of a previous girlfriend. And Tiana learns that he's got a rap sheet for numerous other violent crimes, including assault and battery. She makes the decision to terminate their relationship over concerns of his volatile behavior. On November 17th, provided assistance and reported that the parties were mildly arguing and that Tiana was pretty emotional. Now, I read numerous things about what happened between December of 2008 and January of 2009, so I'm going to try to sum it up for you and not confuse you too much. James continued to contact Tiana despite her repeated requests that he stop. She reported to one of her friends that he was persistently bothering her. On January 4th, James decides to take matters into his own hands. He goes to the Plainsville Police Department, alleging that Tiana had threatened him while he was at her house. The Plainville Police Department documented in their report that, despite his allegations that Tiana had assaulted him, he showed no visible injuries and was very calm and collected while talking with the police. In fact, according to the police, he seemed more concerned about the return of his property. The police then spoke with Tiana and documented in their report that she appeared to be a credible person, and the police concluded that they found no probable cause to indicate that a crime had been committed. On January 10th, Tiana started receiving strange emails from a woman called Jessica Banderas. This woman claimed to be an ex-girlfriend of James Carter, and these emails were nasty and threatening, and they continued consecutively for about 3 days. I did find a couple quotes from them, but the full contents were not released. And they read, quote, "Trust me, baby girl, you are going to lose everything. As God is my witness, punishment is on the way, so be prepared. You will have bad luck, you hear me? Remember this email when karma bites you in the butt. And you will have to answer to God first for screwing James's family over after all the things they did for you." End quote. So they weren't directly threatening, but they were pretty scary to me. On January 13th, Tiana went back to the police and said that she'd been receiving these emails, and she thought that they were from James. And the police told her, unless she had proof that it was him, they couldn't do anything. She was told that these emails were non-threatening. James continued harassing Tiana with phone calls, text messages, and emails. And she kept going to the police to report him, but they would not do anything. Kathy, her mom, said, "I don't know why they did not take my daughter seriously." She went and visited the police station 33 times in 6 weeks. James was also stalking Tiana. He was outside her apartment building, sitting in his car. He followed her while she was shopping and followed her to and from her job at the local university. She took a restraining order out against him, and still he did all of these things, and they just would not do anything. She left work and went to the police station, and then left the police station after he had repeatedly called her at work. And she calls her mom, and she's like, "Mom, these cops, they won't do anything. They treated me like dirt. They didn't believe me. They thought I was lying." In fact, one police officer had the audacity to tell her that he thought she had a fake restraining order. Kathy took it upon herself to call the police department and spoke with a sergeant, and he literally said, just gets crazy to me. He says that Tiana sent him a flyer with her name, picture, and phone number on it, asking him to call her. The officer noted in his report that he found it strange that someone would send a picture of themselves to their ex-boyfriend and feel the need to put their name on the picture. James, who had dated Tiana, would obviously recognize her face. The Plainville police officer contacted Tiana and asked her about this flyer. She informed this officer that he was harassing her and that she wanted nothing to do with him, and she definitely did not write a letter to him or make a flyer with her face on it. The officer sent the flyer off to the lab to have prints lifted off of it, which I do not understand. Like, why waste them? Resources, whatever. By February 2009, it is clear that this relationship is 100% over, and Tiana starts talking with her ex-boyfriend Robert. They were the college sweethearts that I talked about earlier. They were making plans to reconcile and were even considering getting married. According to Tiana's friends and family, she had told James this, and this is when James's harassment went up several notches. Things get really scary when Tiana finds her car vandalized at her apartment on February 7th. At this point, she knows it's James, but she doesn't have any proof. And the police tell her they can't do anything without any proof. So her dad says, well, if we get video, hands down, we've got proof. So he installs a security camera in her apartment aimed towards her car. Alvin said, I spent 4 hours with Tiana that night going over some things. I even pretended to be someone who was attacking her. We did a role play as if someone was coming at you. Where would you go? On February 13th, Tiana is at work, and she receives 3 telephone calls from James Carter. She spoke with him the first time, as she was unaware that it was him on the phone. He called her work, not her cell phone. He asked her to drop the restraining order that she had out against him, and asked her why the relationship had turned out like it had. She ended the call after a few minutes, and the next 2 calls were immediately terminated when she recognized his voice. And this time, she had a witness. Her coworker heard everything. Tiana once again contacted the Plainville Police Department, but she was informed that since the violations had occurred in Waterbury, she would have to report the violations to the Waterbury Police Department. According to Tiana's close friend, Antoinette, who spoke with her that afternoon, Tiana went to the Waterbury Police Department, but she was told to go back to work and wait for the police to come to her. At around 3, when the police had still not arrived, Tiana went back to the police department with a copy of the restraining order and a written statement from the coworker who had heard the phone calls to provide to the Waterbury police. And again, she's told that they had a hard time believing that the restraining order she had was real, and they wanted the Plainville police to fax over a copy. Tiana called her mom again and voiced her frustrations and told her Officer Leon had told her that there was not an order on file and he could not help her. Tiana told her mother that she said to Officer Leon, "What is it going to take before you guys do something when I'm dead?" Tiana's mom, Kathy, again called the police department to speak with someone. She asked to speak with the officer in charge, and mother responded by telling Sergeant Dethelson they needed to do something because James Carter was escalating, and if anything happened to her daughter, she would hold them responsible. Tiana goes home that night and finds a letter stuck to her door. It reads, "Tiana, forgive me. I never cheated on you. If I'm lying, may God take my life. Forgive me for everything else that I've done." And Tiana thought, finally, I have proof that will get the police to arrest him. But unfortunately, the video camera ran out of tape. So once again, they don't have any evidence against James, and this time the police do something. They call him, and they ask him to come in and give a handwriting sample. And Alvin, Tiana's dad, is like, yes, thank God they're doing something. And he told her, don't go home, stay away from your house, just be safe and wait for the police to arrest this guy. I can't. So, on February 14th, Valentine's Day, at approximately 8 a.m., Kathy again calls the Waterbury Police Department and spoke with a Sergeant Sheehan. During this conversation, she stated to the officer that she didn't want her daughter to become a statistic, and if anything happened to her over the weekend, that she would make them pay. She's quite forthcoming with the threats to the police, but I understand, when someone is threatening your child, you want to make sure that someone's doing something, and the police are supposed to protect us, and in Tiana's case, they just didn't. They just didn't, but we'll talk about that some more in a minute. So, Tiana, on Valentine's Day, checks her email, and she discovers 2 messages from James that were sent the day before. They originated from his original account, not the fake one that he had been using before. Again, I only got portions of these as the full contents were not revealed, but he said, "God told me to write, so please don't tell the cops. I'm going through a lot in life, and I'm going through a life or death situation right now. You are the only one I can talk to. Have you ever been close to death or thought you were going to die? If I'm lying, may the Lord strike me down and kill me tomorrow. My dad said he had a dream that our neighbors gave us 2 tombstones at our house. I'm in a dire straits situation. T. Please help me." Now, again, that wasn't the whole email. It was just pieces, and just some of the pieces that I felt like including, but this guy really sounds like he's having some issues, but it does not excuse his behavior. His last and final quote was, "Get rid of the restraining order." When Tiana discovered the emails, she called her mom, who told her to print them out and take them to the police department to report violations on the restraining order. On February 14th, at 4:35, Tiana did just that. She spoke with Officer Mark Canoy regarding the 2 emails that she received on February 13th in violation of this restraining order. The police told Tiana that they would arrest James. However, they didn't. They called him instead. Yeah, they called him and told him, "Hey, Tiana's been here. You violated your restraining order. If you violate it again, we will arrest you." Tiana, believing, hey, they're gonna arrest him, I'm safe, I can go home, just decides, hey, I'm gonna go home and get some laundry, and I'm gonna go to my mom's house for the weekend. The phone call from the police absolutely enraged James Carter. He is lurking in the shadows outside of her apartment with a kitchen knife that he grabbed from home, waiting for Tiana. When she gets home, he catches her outside of her apartment and he stabs her 20 times. was missing a portion of her finger. She somehow finds the strength to make a 911 phone call, and she says, "I'm bleeding to death. My ex-boyfriend just stabbed me to death." Neighbors heard Tiana, and they came over to help her, and you can hear her fading really fast on the 911 call, and then she loses consciousness. Tiana is rushed to the local hospital, and her family is called. Kathy remembers that they got to the hospital at 1:45, and she saw the expression of the receptionist as they identified themselves, and saw the look on the surgeon's face when he came out to meet them. He asked that they go speak somewhere privately, and then a team of doctors came in, and they told her, "We've done everything we could. We even did hand massage on her heart, but she lost too much blood, and we could not revive her." Alvin went and identified her. He looked at her, and there were stab wounds everywhere, and the first thing he thought was, who did this? But it wasn't really a question. He knew. And so did the cops, thanks to Tiana's bravery and quick thinking with her phone call. Ultimately, her dying words identified her attacker. Less than an hour after Tiana died, James Carter II was arrested and charged on suspicion of murder. In the weeks before she was killed, Tiana had filed over 30 complaints to the police, and nothing was done. As I researched this case, I found these really messed up letters that James wrote to his father from jail, and again, I only have portions of it because they don't release the whole thing, but in the first letter, dated June 3rd, 2009, he says, "If you try to screw me over, it's gonna take a Navy SEAL to stop me. I don't regret what I did because that beep was out for blood." Carter also said that Tiana and the police should have just left him alone, and they didn't, and now look what happened. He also wrote that his lawyer will argue that he was suffering from extreme emotional distress that Tiana had caused him. In a different letter to his father, he blames Tiana for running up some bills. "I'm glad that that bee is dead," he wrote, "and I hope she is burning with a pitchfork as big as Texas." He also expressed anger at Tiana's family in these letters. He said, "Tiana and her family are in my way, and they must be taught a lesson. People die because they don't know when to back down." Like, what, you crazy dude? What? You've already killed her. What more do you want? Anyway. In October of 2011, James's trial began. There was a mountain of evidence against him. He was seen on the camera that Tiana's father, Alvin, had set up. Tiana had identified him in that phone call, and he went to his brother's house afterwards and told them what he'd done, his brother and his brother's girlfriend, and they testified against him in his trial. Superior Court Judge Frank D. Adabo Jr. called the killing senseless, needless, and a violent tragedy. He said that the evidence in this case was chilling. "You were inches from her, looking at her when you were stabbing her and causing her death. You need to be punished, and society needs to be protected." Nearly 50 relatives and friends of Tiana attended the sentencing. Many hugged and cried during and after. Many were upset that James got the approval from the judge not to be in the courtroom during the proceedings. He was detained in a room nearby. In court, Notice released a poem that his daughter wrote in August 2008, titled Chapter Closed, about leaving James Carter. She wrote about being released from his temper, torture, threats, ego, jealousy, and insecurity. An empty house and solitude is how he will spend his days, she wrote, and I rest assured in knowing I am beautiful, smart, and on my way. James Carter II is serving 60 years without parole for the savage slaying of Tiana Notice, which is the maximum sentence allowed in Connecticut. But that will never be enough for her parents. Alvin said, I really wanted to get to the bottom of it. Looking at the face value of what was going on, I realized that this was a system failure, and Alvin was determined to fix it so that no one else's child would be murdered like his beloved daughter. And he knew what was needed. More action from the police, more action from the legislators, more action from the courts. Alvin Notice also said his family received an apology letter from Carter dated November 2nd, the day after James Carter was convicted. But Alvin said he and his family did not put much stock in this letter because James had never shown remorse before, and he had bragged about killing Tiana. The letter did say, I hope you can find it in your hearts and prayers to forgive me for what I've done. I apologize sincerely from my heart and soul. God forgives, and hopefully you can too. Please accept my apology. In the years since Tiana's death, James Carter has gotten action that has made authorities in Connecticut and other states take the deadly dangers of domestic violence seriously. Alvin has formed the Tiana Notice Foundation with the help of Connecticut State Senator May Flexer and Karen Jarmuck, former state legislator, and now the head of the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Laws have been toughened to prevent domestic violence murders. They started a pilot program for GPS monitoring, which was largely connected to Tiana's murder. The GPS monitoring is put in place when the judicial system determines that an abuser is very high risk. They look at the issue of lethality and try to assess whether or not this abuser exhibits traits that often lead to murder. So through that system, the victim is alerted when the offender is coming within a certain distance of their home, workplace, or family members' homes. If James had had a GPS on his person, Tiana would have known that he was by her house, and she might still be alive. Following her murder, Tiana's estate filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the officers who handled the complaints against James Carter II. A jury agreed with the family and awarded them a $10 million judgment. Now, if you've been with me on my channel for a really long time, you know that I am a domestic violence survivor. And in fact, I cried about it in one of my videos long ago, a similar case to this one. And I want to tell you that I really had an officer that really helped me. I was put in a situation where, in fact, my ex called 911 on me because I was trying to leave officer here right now, because I saw that as my opportunity. He had broken my house key. He had taken my cell phone because it was in his name. I didn't know anyone's phone numbers. I didn't know what to do, and I thought, if I can't get the police here, I'm never going to get free. And the police came quickly, 3 of them, and 2 of them stayed outside with Joshua because he had the audacity to say, "Stay in here, I'll handle this," and they heard him. And the older lieutenant came inside, and I was embarrassed. I was in my pajamas, and he looked at me and he said, "You know you don't have to go through this, right?" And I will never ever forget that man, because he said, "I have a daughter, and she's beautiful like you, and I don't know you, but I know that you deserve more than that." And he said, "Tell me what I can do for you." And I told him, "I just want to get my stuff and leave. I'm trying to leave. You can see the boxes. I'm trying to go. He's taken my phone. He's taken my key. If I don't get out now, I can't leave." But he won't go. So they made him leave, and they gave me the house for the night so that I could get my things and get out. And I'll never forget that, ever, because if they hadn't come, I don't know what would have happened to me. I experienced the same thing that Tiana did. After that, he emailed me in excess of 300 times a day. He got my phone number. He sent me letters. He found me at work. He still messages me. And we broke up in 2012. All of this happened in 2012. But this could have been me. He could have easily caught me outside of my apartment, and I probably wouldn't have been as clear-headed as Tiana to get 911 on the phone. So I just want to tell you, if you're in a relationship like that, and you're afraid that you can't leave, or you don't know how to leave, or you need help, or you need to talk, you can always message me. I've had several of you message me just because you're having a rough day, and I do respond, and I do really try to help. I'm not a counselor. I'm not by any means necessarily qualified for something like that, but I would help you as much as I could. Because we're all friends here. I just told you about one of the craziest nights of my life. Obviously, I didn't really get into details, but it was scary. And I think that we need stronger laws against stuff like this. Like, she went to the police 33 times in 6 weeks. That is absolutely insane. Why didn't anybody do anything? Why did they just brush her under the rug? Because he wasn't beating the crap out of her all the time. Because he was just sending her harassing emails. I mean, that's how it starts. He grabbed a kitchen knife from his house, drove over, and stabbed her to death. Violently. What? Anyway. This case really got to me, as you can tell, and as I was researching it, I was just sitting there like, what? I just can't believe that this is still happening. I don't understand why there aren't stronger laws put in place for protection. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you for the next edition of Love and Murder, coming up soon.